Aloha and welcome to Inside the Writer's Studio. I'm your host, Isla Allgood, and I'm excited today to have somebody from my neighborhood, Jamie Brooks, who will be sharing some of his written work, and then we'll follow that up with some talk story to get to know him as a writer. Please welcome Jamie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Brooks, and I am from the little tiny town of Kapa'au, Hawaii. I just moved here in May of last year, so it's been a transition for me, both as a writer and transitions are good for material and ideas, and maybe we could talk about that. So I have an interesting piece. I think it's interesting. I'll read to you, and it's let's see. It's a piece I actually submitted to Hawaii Writers Guild, the Latitudes Journal, and let's say it got rejected, and it was two essays that I submitted. And it got rejected, and but both of the essays got rejected. The most positive feedback I got from this one, and it's the essay that I like the least. So it's sort of an interesting maybe discussion about writing for your audience and not writing for yourself. And so I'm going through the process of cultivating this discussion, and what can I say? I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but it's an interesting development. So I'll just write it. I'll read it to you here. It's the essay is called "The Purpose of a Community Garden," and it has a subtitle called "Serving Others is the Opposite of Utopianism or Nihilism." The men of Pa'a work in a local food garden. For them, it is a form of rehabilitation. As practiced by this group, individuals find purpose through service to the community. This purpose then becomes the foundation for these men to become rehabilitated and re-enter the community. As stated by the group, it is through the intention of serving others where individuals find purpose. Rehabilitation, serving the community at a local food garden, means laying down socio-ecological circuitry. Working in a community garden or commoning is something as old as society itself. It is making a comeback of sorts as people are increasingly recognizing the potential of small-scale experiments in permaculture. For the men of Pa'a, the word pono captures the essence of righteousness that depends on being in balance with others. When serving others, we are in a community. The we, as stated by this group, of the community also restores the me. Individuals arrive at pono where individuals' needs equipoise with communal needs. A definition of commonwealth is an intentioned me working to the advantage of a common well-being. Conjuring a common weal, it is a material precondition for more abstract terms like democracy or republic. It is an old definition of wealth bounded by a feeling of independence through individual effort serving others, making it an individual sovereignty that gets to be imposing and effective when it is the thing resident in or bubbling forth from a set of men, a society, a people, a nation, a point of departure for a democracy. On the fertile slopes of Kohala Mountain on the Big Island of Hawaii, self-sustaining farm practices touch on notions of community currency. The men of Pa'a, formerly incarcerated Native Hawaiian men working at a community garden, have a better chance to come back to pono. A riven community recompensates perhaps for an illegal and violent annexation of the Hawaiian archipelago, making for a possible community indemnifying with Kanaka Maoli when a restorative balance in individual relationships with other things, places, and people is operationalized. Pono invoking a working definition of a good life that is earned. Environmental commons, a law of linkages, episteme. Humans in balance with humans and non-human nature is a prerequisite for pono. It is based on ancient canonical principles and strictures, the self manifested through its ecological substructure, with the human condition functioning in a nature-culture continuum. A palimpsest for entire societies of individuals potentially made whole serving others, representing and hinge upon an unremitting and immutable definition of environmental justice, where an environmental commons as infrastructure is an essential part of social and cultural existence. A community garden serves as a backdrop of restorative justice. Native Hawaiian sustainability practices are pragmatic arrangements of people where they live. Justice, when nature is understood to be an integral part of the metabolism of social life. This is a section called Kupa'au, sustainability. Getting to pono in a community garden isn't an airy utopianism. It is essential hands-on work where the land determines where the men of Pa'a find purpose serving others. Purpose is contingent on the land that carries it. The men of Pa'a and a farmer strive towards pono, cultivating native Hawaiian foods in a non-human environmental commons. The farmer explains permaculture as growing the things that love to grow where you live. This depends on a cooperatively appropriate mixture of sun, dirt, water, and temperature. He says, I want to do at least my part in perpetuating these crops, a fulfilling act prefigured by a biogeochemical cycle of carbon exchange with the atmosphere, with the biosphere. Biochemistry as fundamental to being human. It fulfills a human flourishing. For Native Hawaiians, the land educates. A community garden then is where self-knowledge, consciousness, and subjectivity emerge out of a perceptual engagement with our environment. Human life being ecologically embedded, entangled, and dependent in every temporal and spatial context on non-human ecologies. The farmer reaches pono knowing the food that grows here and serves the people here by means of ecosystems. Pono is an opportunity for the men of Pa'a and communities to be made whole where they are now, where a commonwealth and a thriving environment imbricate. The inverse of ecological justice, rights and interests of humans in nature, in line with the rights and interests of non-human nature, being a form of auto-destruction. This ontology of social and ecological interdependence means pono is dependent on a narrow, disputatious democratic politic. Holding a living commonwealth is recognizing biological systems and the men of Pa'a, groups made illegible by these politics that already produce and undergird its infrastructure. Overriding this circuitry undermines the location of human reinvention.
Thank you, Jamie. So first of all, thank you for picking something that was valuable, I think, to where we live.
Yeah.
Really brought up some some things in a different way. I didn't know, I know there have been other programs to help people with addiction, where they're working in the earth to help work through some issues. But I hadn't heard of this particular program. And I think that in itself is so valuable to get something like that out there. I'm
Yeah.
sorry Hawaii Writers Guild didn't choose you, but there's something else for you.
No, I mean, you know, being rejected is an opportunity to develop a piece, you know, and you know, I think that as a writer, that, you know, I think when we understand and accept the fact that it's a communal process to write a piece, then we become better writers. And there's a humility to that. And it's a letting go of egos, because we're not writing for ourselves. And we hopefully are getting an audience, and, you know, and so I think I agreed with the reviewers, and that helped, because, you know, it didn't, this is a much more fleshed out version of it than it originally was. And it has more context now. I mean, you know, I'm reading it to you and I'm already looking at errors and things I would change, you know.
Yeah. I'll say something about, I've had pieces where I share them with my writers group, and I knew they really weren't ready. You know, the piece wasn't ready, but I just wanted to share it. And it's interesting that what you get back from that feedback of, yeah, it's not ready because this didn't make sense to them, or this doesn't go with this sentence, or this idea isn't carried through, or whatever the feedback is. And then you go home and then talk a little bit about your editing process. Like, what do you do? What did you do with the feedback that you got?
Well, I didn't get a lot of feedback, but it was the main thing that stuck with me is what the original version of the piece lacked context. And I read it through again. I went, oh yeah, you know, it does lack context. Meaning, like, and it made me go back to you know, as my training, I guess. I mean, I kind of right on this edge of academic writing, and sometimes my writing is too dense, and I need to give it more breathing room.
Yeah.
And but I did go back into some more sources when I got that feedback, and I went, oh yeah, you know, I left out this component and this component that really needed to be in there. And it was like, so I really appreciated that feedback, because I couldn't possibly have thought of it at the time.
Right.
When I got it.
We get so in our piece that we can't see it anymore, you know, unless maybe you put it aside and you don't look at it for a month and then you read it. Then maybe you can see some things you didn't see before. But I find it's really helpful to have somebody else looking at it and then saying whatever they feel and experience from reading it.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, my experience as a writer and being in, you know, grad school, some of my harshest critics, the ones that were hardest to hear, ended up being the most, you know, encouraging, because you have to struggle with it. And when somebody goes, hey, you didn't flesh this out enough, you need to work on this, and you have to struggle with it more.
Yeah. And
you know, you just have to wrestle with these ideas, and fleshing them out is hard. And the more we can have people that are rooting us on in that process, and encouraging that rigor, because it's rigorous. And you know, don't bore us, get to the chorus, you know. Nobody wants to hear your internal dialogue. You know, make this accessible, make it interesting, make it important, make it relevant, you know. And that's these are the strictures that we're always engage in as writers. And the more we can just get to it, and you know, I think the better we are. Don't waste time with.
Right, but sometimes you have to waste time to know that you've wasted time. Like you go
Yeah.
back and you read it and you're like, why did I put all this in there? That has nothing to do with anything. But in the moment, one of the things I've found for me is I tend to leave out too much detail because I like to get in and get out of stuff. So I'm not a novel writer. I'm someone who wants to write essays and poetry and but I've gotten the feedback numerous times. We need more. We don't know. We want to hear more about this or we want to hear more about that. So you bring up a lot of valuable points for anyone watching who does write or wants to write, whether you're new or you've been doing it since you're a kid and you're 50 years old. There's so much to learn and there's so much to continue to work with.
Yeah, I think even if you are writing a bunch of gobbledygook down there, even that counts.
Yeah.
That counts too. It's like I was thinking about this morning. There's like this weird way that you come to ideas about writing, and it reminds me of being with my dog. Which is my dog, if I trust my dog smells something, then he smells something. If I follow his lead,
yeah,
when he smells something, he's onto something. It's like, and I just have to trust that process. And so there's a little process with where you can kind of come up with ideas, or ideas come to you in a bodily kind of way, in the sense that it's like a gut feeling, or it comes from your body feels something, and you haven't put your cognitive, your reasoning skills and attached it to the bodily feeling, and you haven't gotten there yet. And sometimes but it always leads you. Your body oftentimes can lead you to ideas, and this is kind of anchored in the humanities, and the body, the emotions, the land, which is kind of what that piece was, and being here, being influenced by those things. I'm going off track, but
well, say what often. So what inspires you to write? You start talking a little bit about. Sometimes your body informs you. Sometimes the land informs you. What's something else that might spark you to want to start writing about something?
Well, I think it is those things. It's like it's emotion.
Emotion.
Like it as a person who makes me think of being a mental health sufferer myself. I have anxiety problems, and one of my therapists taught me about, and practicing mindfulness. I learned about paying attention to thoughts, and so thoughts and feelings, kind of the interplay between the two things. So why did I respond so strongly to this particular phenomenon? And then when I start thinking about what that emotional response was, ideas can generate from there and inspire. So for instance, as a climate activist, I get very angry when I see Donald Trump use his power to deny the existence of human-caused climate change. That gets me so angry, and as a person who cares about that, the utter immorality of that. And those emotions brought up all kinds of ethical theories that led to a paper that is now in review process. And so those emotions, that anger, that really being angry about how, I wasn't quite sure the depth of the immorality of when you use your power to publicly deny the existence of human-caused climate change.
Right. So you're saying that something like that triggers something in you, and rather than just walking around talking bad about whatever it is and staying in your anger, you let that anger inform you in a way that then you can start to write about it and do
Right.
something with it. What can I do with it?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, like, so what was the primary thing that made you angry about it? And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden that leads to an idea of, the paper talks about hypermasculinity,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. So
how,
you go on a
yeah.
trail. Yeah.
And it ends up going into this process, and you're in these ideas, these cascading, the ideas just kind of cascade from there. But they came originally from just that emotion of
Mhm.
being angry. It's like, well, what is about that? Why do I feel, why does it come up again and again and again?
Mhm.
And that's kind of where I was talking about, that where your body oftentimes knows something that you you don't, and it's telling you, like, this is important. and
Yeah.
and I think that as writers, when we pay attention to those things, and then when we use our reasoning skills to kind of maybe sit down and think about, well, what is going on with that emotion that
Mhm.
I'm feeling? Why did I experience this particular event in this way? And how, and how that can lead to ideas about a writing that, you can, I think maybe to some extent a lot of writers are that way.
Mhm.
It comes from that feeling and that emotion of something. And yeah.
And it could be in the moment, and it could be an experience from the past, and it could be somebody I know recently wrote a poem called Triggered, because something that happened recently triggered memories that were very emotional for her from other parts of times in her life, and it came together in one piece. So and
Yeah,
sometimes
exactly.
it has to do with the future. You're talking about the environment. What kind of future do we want to see? So it could be relating to the future and what we want to see in either our future as an individual, and or connected to the community and the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think that it's not even just writers. It's like, this can be applicable to, all disciplines. If you're in the sciences, and,
Mhm.
how ideas come from these intuitive places,
Yeah.
and how when we trust them as meaningful, and that we kind of are inquisitive and we're curious about, like, why do I feel this way? Why, and this is interesting. And when you can start uncovering some of the aspects of where the emotions derive, that you can come up with ideas that turn into topics and become important things that are, either scientific discoveries or intellectual, inquiry. And
Mhm.
so,
Yeah, well, I think you bring up probably something we could talk about a long time. I do a radio show called Intuitive Talk Stories. So
yeah.
to me, my intuition informs my life very directly, very much moment to moment.
Right.
And I know the value of having a connection with that, which is a little different than my emotions. And, it's taken me years to fine tune those differences. And I use them also in writing. It's like, okay, what's my intuition says I need to go with this. And maybe there's usually emotion in everything. So
Right.
incorporate that too, and
Yeah.
then use what intellect I have to get it all on paper.
Yeah, I mean, this is, nothing new.
Yeah.
Humanities scholars have been, dealing with this for hundreds of years. It's not a new thing, but it's an always constantly evolving thing that we grapple with as human beings. And I think the gift of writing is, and being curious about these feelings is where we can draw a lot of material. It's endless. If you spend time in meditation practice and paying attention to your thoughts, I mean, the amount of thoughts going into my mind at any given moment, it's, some of it's just utter rubbish. And much of it is just, banal, what's for dinner tonight, and not very interesting.
Right.
Well, oftentimes when I'm feeling a strong emotion about something, that's really interesting.
Mm.
Like what's that may be hugely complex and some topic worthy of much more deeper inquiry.
Well, I think that's a good place for us to close up today.
Great.
Jamie, I want to thank you so much for sharing your piece and talking with me on the show. And for people who are watching, if you want to know more about the Hawaii Writers Guild, you can go to the website, hawaiiwritersguild.com. And then there's also a Facebook page, Hawaii Writers Guild. Until next time, aloha, everyone.
Aloha. Thank you, Isla.
Thank you.